Hi, I'm Karen. We're here at Montavilla Sewing Center, and today we're talking about the Baby Lock Verve. In this video, I'm going to show you how to do stitch combinations and lettering. Now, when you're ready to sew, you're usually in this right here, which is the sewing, that just like utility stitches. But if you go down to here, that's going to give you different categories. The blue categories are for your just everyday sewing, utility stitches, buttonholes, and stuff like that. These down here in the yellow area are what you can actually take and combine stitches. So I'm going to show you that. Now you've also got utility stitches over here that you can use to combine, and that's really helpful for if you want to put like a space between a couple motifs using straight stitches. And I'm going to give an example of that. So I'm going to go back here. We're going to choose, let's say, page back till we get to that one right there. Oops, that's not the one I meant. This one right here. Now you can see that kind of looks a little bit different than this here. This looks like some round baubles kind of connected together instead of these nice stitches like that. So I'm going to show you how we would combine that with another stitch, a straight stitch right here. Take one of those. And now when we show you what that looks like, I'm going to go over to here and we're going to get a whole line of stitches like that. So you can see that looks a lot different. You can also use this button right here to show you what that looks like. Now there's also this little pocket, and that means we can save that stitch. So I'm going to put that right there. We're going to save it to the machine. We could also save it to a USB stick. And you put the USB stick right here. But in this case, we're going to save it to the machine. It says it's saving. That means we can get out of that stitch, get into any other kind of stitch, or if we wanted to bring that back out of memory, this is how we do that right there. Now it will show you the first stitch that's saved here, and that's what the whole thing looked like. If I choose this one, that one says love. Okay, so we're going to go back. Now you can delete, or if you choose to set, that means that's ready to sew out. Now I'm going to go back here to this. It gives me the screen that asks me, do you want to cancel what you're about to sew and choose to sew something else? You can push OK. If you decide, oh, I hit the wrong button here, push cancel and you're back to where you were. But in this case, I'm going to say OK. All right. So I'm going to show you how to do a combination of lettering and decorative stitches. So, by the way, when you sew something out, you want to have a stabilizer on the back, especially if you're using a thinner fabric like a quilting cotton. If you don't, you're going to get these kind of lumps in the fabric where it's kind of scrunched up. So the stabilizer is going to keep it nice and flat. I've used a tearaway stabilizer in this case. Okay, so let's go to this one here. I'm going to page ahead until I find hearts. Now I know that these hearts are going to be 5 millimeters wide. I want them a little bit wider. That's because I want the baseline to be the same as the baseline of my lettering. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to widen that stitch a little bit. You can see in the window right here, it's widening a little bit more. That's okay. That's what I want. Now I'm going to go to lettering. So I don't want to push this one here because, again, it'll give me that. I don't want that. I want this one here, which gives me the categories of lettering. So let's spell out baby. Okay, so we've got B, A, and you can see it's right on the baseline there. Now that A, I'd kind of like to have that a little bit smaller since there's no lowercase letters here. There is, by the way, in the embroidery section, but we're not doing machine embroidery, we're just doing regular sewing. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to make that smaller. And see how that makes that A a little bit smaller. So I'm going to go back here to B, and it keeps that smaller, the next one smaller, so I don't have to keep going back and forth, which is nice. I'm going to page ahead until I get to Y, and that's also smaller. Now I'm going to go back to where I can put another heart in there. Page ahead till I find those hearts. That's what I want now. That one is the same width is what I had before. I didn't have to go back and change that. Now you'll notice there are some jump stitches between like the end of the Y to the baseline on the heart. Those stitches at the end of the Y, that's locked in there. So you can actually cut those little jump stitches and make your embroidery, your decorative stitches look nice and neat when you're done. Okay, now notice the foot that it calls for. That's the end foot. So this one here has a channel at the bottom. It's really nice, especially for anything like satin stitch that puts a lot of thread in there. But it calls for it because you're putting a lot of thread in your fabric when you're doing a decorative stitch. Okay, I'm going to push the lockout key, take that foot off of there. That's a regular foot. You can see how it's different on the bottom. Put this key on, or this button, this foot on, then we do the unlock. Now, I'm going to see what this looks like using this one here. It gives me just a single group of stitches, the heart at the beginning, baby, and then the heart at the end. That's all I want. It's okay. But if I wanted, say, that repeating motif, I could go over here, push this one right here, and then that's what it would look like. It just would repeat over and over again. There's another thing that you can do, and that's this one here where it has the kind of arrow under it with ABC. I could actually space this out a little bit more if I wanted to. You can see how that's making it a little bit longer there. And you might decide you want to do that, or you might decide you want to compress it a little bit more, but you have that option right there. Okay. Delete just means it deletes the last one. So if you misspelled a word, you want to make sure and check, make sure your spelling is correct. But if you misspelled a word or a name, you would delete back to where it, you need to change that letter, and then you put the correct letter in and then respell your word. That's how that works. Alrighty. So we are going to stitch this out on some quilting cotton with a little bit of stabilizer under there. And this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to push this cutter button, which also turns on the automatic locking stitch button. But at the end, when it gets to the end of that, and I'm going to actually make sure it just does one of those. When it gets to the end, it will stop sewing and cut. Now, I could use the foot control and just leave my foot down on the pedal until it stops, or I could go like this and it's ready to go. Now, it had to kind of think about it a little bit, turn to red, then it realized, oh, foot control is not connected. We can go ahead and start sewing. Notice it gave a little bit of a locking stitch at the beginning. That's perfectly normal. That's what you want. And here we go. Now, it's going to tell you up here where you are. Of course, you want to be watching your fabric, not the screen, but it does highlight the stitch that it's actually on at the end there. We've got the Y, the heart, and then it gives a locking stitch at the end, cuts the thread, and we're ready to go. Now, of course, remember, we can cut these little stitches in there, and that's perfectly fine. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and cut them right now. And those are all locked in. That's an example of how you can cut these stitches right like that. So, and that made a really nice little design here that you can use things like this on quilting labels or name tags and stuff like that. You put it in clothing and stuff like this. Okay, so again, to save that, I would just go like this, put it right there, saving, and I can get into any other stitch I want. I can even get into just regular sewing, but if I want to retrieve that, go back to this here. This is sort of an overall umbrella. Let's choose what kind of stitch we want, or we can choose what's in our memory. Now, this is going to give you your first stitch in there. Set that, and there we are, ready to go. Okay, so that is stitch combination, lettering, and how to save and retrieve your stitches. I hope this has been a helpful video to you. If you've enjoyed it, give us a thumbs up. And if you have comments or questions, you can leave those in the area down below. We have lots of other videos on this machine and on other machines here on our Montavilla YouTube channel, so stay tuned. Thanks for watching. Bye.